The gym erupted in gunfire, and the men with pistols were not human. Bullets bounced off Shehe's scales. Then impossible fire swallowed the room. Callum crawled through smoke toward the last victim until the roof came down, and reality itself began to tear. Ever since Callum Wells was young, he'd seen things. People. Things that were people. Or people that were things. The not quite human. He'd mentioned it once, as a child, and the doctors had prescribed pills. Callum, senior, paranoid soul that he was, had stopped his son from taking them after a week when they did no more than make him fuzzy and stupid. Callum didn't mention what he saw again, but that didn't mean he stopped seeing them. Mostly, it was people with the wrong color skin, the wrong ears, the wrong eyes, the wrong proportions. Sometimes it was just people that nobody else seemed to notice, walking as if they were invisible. It was one of the invisible people who had come by, walking around the edges of the small crowd. The person in question was a short man, looking entirely human but dressed in bright blue and wearing a beret. Nobody did, nor did the man really seem to pay attention to the mourners, instead wandering between them and the coffins and kneeling down to inspect something on one of the nearby gravestones. He glanced up and made eye contact with Callum. Immediately, Callum relaxed his gaze, looking past the not person. It was a skill he'd had to learn in lieu of the drugs. People stared off into space a lot, but they didn't focus on things that weren't there. The invisible man frowned at Callum, leaned to one side, and when Callum's eyes didn't track him, shrugged and continued onward. Irrational anger kindled in Callum's gut at the man's disrespect. Callum? He blinked and looked at Miss Mosley, one of his parents' friends. She reached out to take his hand and patted it soothingly. "It's okay, dear." "Thank you, Miss Mosley," Callum said. "We all knew it was coming, but now that it's here." "Yes, I know. When you get to my age, you go to so many funerals. Don't be maudlin. I know they're better off now. Come on, we'll go to that breakfast place you like." "Oh, you spoil me, dearie," Miss Mosley said, but didn't turn down the invitation. In the weeks that followed, Callum made the time to go to the gym or go biking or shooting on a regular basis. Considering the complaints of some of his clients, at the very least staying in shape was doing him favors. "Hey," the gym owner said, "you could use a bit of orientation?" "I could." Marie flashed him a smile. He was actually a little surprised by the attention she paid him, since he considered himself solidly average, though fit. It was more than a little flattering, and it buoyed his mood, at least until Marie crumpled in the middle of a set. "Marie!" He grabbed her on the way down, wincing as he banged himself on the side of the machine, and looked around to ask for help when 3 people burst through the front door of the gym. West Virginia was, for all the jokes, a quiet state, and he lived in a quiet town. Gyms were not generally considered prime targets for robberies, so he was completely baffled and blindsided when the 3 lifted guns and started shooting. He hurled himself behind the equipment, dimly registering that the gunmen weren't entirely human. Nor was their target. Their pistols cracked as they aimed at Shahi, but the bullets just seemed to bounce off his scales. The lizard man rounded to face them and opened his jaws, and an instant migraine slammed Callum backward. Stars dancing in front of his eyes, as there was a sudden thunder heat scorched his face, and when he blinked his vision clear, Shahi was gone. So were the gunmen. There was only a curtain of fire on that side of the gym, hot enough that the glass slumped and ran in little puddles. Callum stared for a moment, then coughed as acrid smoke rolled in. The sprinklers went off, to no effect, and he realized that everyone had to get out. He had to get everyone out. A quick glance around found that everyone was unconscious save for him, and for no apparent reason. Since there were no more gunmen or guns, Callum dashed to the free weights and simply threw a barbell through the front window. He used a smaller one to sweep the shards before starting to haul bodies, starting with Marie. The fire was clearly not a normal blaze, since it spread faster and was far hotter than any normal fire should be. By the time he got the second person out, he was having to crawl under the smoke. It had only been a few seconds, and the wall of fire was licking along the ceiling and the floor both. Callum knew he should call it in, but there were only 5 other people in the gym. 4 of them were close enough to the windows. It was just the last one who was slumped on an elliptical machine in the back. But the air was hot. Too hot, searing his lungs and making him lightheaded as he crawled toward the unconscious woman. He thought he could handle it, until the too fast fire brought down the roof. Or rather, the massive fans and rows of televisions and electrical wiring, plummeting down with a horrendous noise. The collapse sent a shower of liquid sparks over the ground. And over him, Callum screamed and then swore as a drop seared through his bicep. Adrenaline damping the pain enough to keep him moving, coughing and crawling away from the mess. The woman toppled off the elliptical after a single pull, but he had no idea what to do with her. He could barely breathe, the smoke filling the air and obscuring the tangle of junk in the way. If that wasn't bad enough, his headache was back, migraine lights flashing over his visual field. Darkness closed in from the sides, but Callum kept crawling. He could almost see the opening to the outside despite the detritus in the way, and lights flashed across his eyes as he reached out in that direction, envisioning himself there as if by hope alone he could get there. His vision flashed, and suddenly he was sucking in fresh air and dropping the poor suffocating woman on the ground next to the other victims. Suddenly, he wasn't in the gym. He stood in a vast, crystalline space. No floor, no walls, just shimmering. Geometric light, infinite and cold. His body felt weightless. The pain in his arm was gone. The smoke was gone. Silence pressed against his ears. A voice not heard, but felt resonated through his skull. Callum Wells, observer, threshold bearer. He spun, but there was nothing, just light. You have seen what others cannot. You have walked between worlds without knowing. The fire was no accident. The gunmen were no ordinary killers. They were hunters, and you were collateral. What are you talking about? His voice echoed strangely. You are being awakened. Not by choice, by necessity. The anathema are spreading. The old barriers are failing. You have the gift, the sight, but it was dormant. Now, it must burn. The light contracted, coalescing into a single point before him. It pulsed, warm and alive. He reached out, and it entered him. Pain exploded through every nerve, white hot and absolute. He screamed, but no sound came. His body dissolved into particles, then reformed. He felt something crack open inside his chest, a door he never knew existed. When he opened his eyes, he understood. Magic, raw, untamed, woven into his very cells. He could feel the threads of reality, thin and frayed, and beyond them, something hungry. The voice spoke one last time. You are no longer just a man. You are a guardian. Find the others. The usurpation has already begun, and Callum trusts no one. Not even yourself. The world shattered. He gasped, choking on fresh air. Lying on the grass outside the burning gym, the woman was beside him, alive. The fire raged behind them, but in his right hand, a symbol glowed, a seven-pointed star. Faintly pulsing, he looked up. The invisible man from the funeral stood across the street, watching. And this time, when their eyes met, the man smiled. Then he vanished. Callum's hand clenched. The star burned brighter. He had no idea what he'd become. But he knew one thing. His quiet life was over. And somewhere out there, the thing that had come for Shahi was still hunting.